everybody. We are coming back into the world again. Full force. We're just waiting for Suzanne to jump in. There she is.
There I am.
Good morning. How is everybody? I hope you guys are doing awesome. I am Brenda, the HR lady, and with me is Suzanne. That's right. Also known as the evil HR lady.
That's right. Brenda's just the HR lady, and
just a boring old HR lady.
She's just a boring old HR lady. I, on the other half, am a bit evil.
That's awesome. Well, listen, we want to thank everybody for joining us today. This is going to be it's a topic that hits me near and dear to my heart. We are going to be talking about how you can support your veterans during this time right now. So we know that a lot of people that the government has pulled out of Afghanistan, there's a lot of criticism as to how that has taken place. If you employ a veteran workforce, which some of you actually have this as a prime focus, and that's great. If it's not a prime focus, you probably do have veterans in your workforce, and veterans are very upset. And some veterans are negatively impacted by this. So we're going to talk through, not so much. Now, remember, we don't get into the political stuff, right? That's not what we do. But what we do focus in on is how you can really work with your workforce. What are the things that you can do to actually support your veterans if you discern or you see anybody who's struggling. And we're going to kind of talk about what the signs are for individuals who are in distress. Now, that could be a veteran, it could be a non-veteran, it doesn't matter. All these things still apply when you see people who are struggling.
Right. And it's really important, whether you're HR or a manager, business owner, to keep your eye out for this. Because even though technically it's not your responsibility, it's your responsibility. Yeah, because your people, you don't have a business without people. And so it's really, really important if your employees are hurting or stressed or something. And the things we talk about here can be used in the case of anything that goes on in the world. Things can affect us even if we're not directly a part of them.
Exactly. Sorry, I had to squeak a cough in there behind the scenes. I didn't want to blast everybody with it. So you know what? And I want to tell you a story about something that happened in my workforce in a couple of positions ago. So I worked for a government contractor as a VP of HR. And in 1 week, we had 2 employees that literally died within 2 days of each other.
Oh boy.
Yeah. One was a suicide and the other happened overseas in Japan. And the employee passed away from natural causes, but had his 12-year-old son with him who just arrived and knew nobody. And so, yeah, so a week of distress for everybody. I mean, first off, you know, my immediate thought was, who's with the son? And people looked at me and I said, we need to get a chaplain over there. And it was convenient that, you know, we were working on a government contract that we could employ the military to help us out with this. And I can't remember if we actually were able to get a chaplain over, but you know, if you are a government contractor, then you know, look, the military is willing to work with you on pretty significant stuff like that. So then it was a lot of, you know, talking to employees who worked directly with the the team, with each other, and then to have that dynamic taking place in 2 parts of the country. Well, actually, I guess we could say 2 parts in the country. They were well known. The 2 employees were well known within our team that expanded all over the world. So the events took place in 2 different parts of the world. But it was a lot. It was a lot. So, that was something that we had to brief our managers on. And that was, let's talk about the signs of what to look for of somebody who is struggling. And the very first sign, I mean, it's obvious that you're going to see people who are going to be sad, right? That's your first indicator, obviously. The second sign, though, one of the most important ones, is that if you see somebody who's starting to withdraw, that is a sign, especially somebody who's very outgoing.
Right. That is something to really look for with that withdrawal, or if people have what appears to be a personality change overnight. That can be a real sign that someone is in distress for many, many, many different reasons. It can't just be that they're having a bad day. That happens, but especially if it goes on for more than one day, it's a really big cause for concern.
Yeah. And this type of event that's going on right now in the world doesn't just impact the US, it impacts other people of other nations. So if you also have or are working across the globe and you have people who are impacted by this, that doesn't matter. That is just human nature, first and foremost. So the first one is that they're starting to withdraw. The second thing that you want to be mindful of is, how are they showing up in their communication? This could be subtle. It could also be extremely pronounced. And what I mean by that is let's say, for example, you have somebody who's, you typically writes a lot of email, like longer emails. And all of a sudden you notice that their emails are starting to become very short. That is a sign. That is something that you definitely want to be on the lookout for. Train your managers on this stuff as well. Train your leaders. Like, this is what you need to pay attention to.
Absolutely. And when you're looking at those things, when you're paying attention to those things, you can get help at the beginning instead of waiting until it's a crisis.
Right.
And we're not at all telling you to become a therapist. You're not a therapist.
Oh, no.
And don't try to be one.
Nope.
But it's paying attention to what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Watch also for other employees who are starting to rib or make jokes about the current situation. Now, a lot of people are not happy about it. So jokes, we see jokes, taking shots over at the administration, and that's normal stuff. But if you have somebody, like everybody, we all have one in every group. We all have that one clown, the class clown, right? And it's not uncommon that they can step over those bounds. And if you know that you have the jokester in the group of the company, that's somebody that you should pull aside and just say, hey, listen, one of the great things about you that we actually really appreciate is your open jocularity, is your ability to, crack a wisecrack and make people laugh. Until we're on the other side of all of this tension, we're just going to ask that you not do that on this subject. Have at it on everything else that you do, right? We love it. But on this particular subject, we're just going to ask that you not do that openly. Do it personally, outside of work. We're just trying to help some employees get through a very difficult time.
Right. Right. And it's okay to acknowledge that there's been difficult things going on in the world without being political about it. I think sometimes we're scared to speak up because you can't be upset about something without taking a side. You can be upset about something without taking a side or without placing blame. And then, of course, we started this specifically talking about veterans, but right now we've got Hurricane Ida going on, which is causing damage. And you may say, oh, but we're located in Minnesota. No one's affected by this in our business. You can have an employee whose sister, mother, aunt, brother, best friend from high school is got a house that's unlivable now because of storm damage, and it's stressing them out.
Absolutely.
Those things happen. And it may hit you in ways that you don't expect.
Correct.
It may hit your
Absolutely.
business in ways you don't expect.
Yep, absolutely. And we have a lot of people that are trying to figure life out right at the moment. So we want to make sure that we are definitely doing what we can. Now, I'm starting, for those of you who are over in Clubhouse, I'm starting to bring some people up because we want this to be an interactive session today. We want you to be able to ask your questions. We're going to finish getting through these next couple of parts, and then we'll go ahead and start taking your questions. So another thing to look out for is if you see somebody whose temperament is starting to shift, you know what, that is also a really good sign. If you see people who are starting to become, they're not as happy-go-lucky, and that's not necessarily what I'm talking about, but they're very quick to kind of light up, kind of fuse up a little bit or get a little bit aggravated when that's not normally what's going on, that could be a symptom of something else that is happening as well. Absenteeism is another one. If all of a sudden you see people who are starting to, they've got that perfect attendance record, or they've never had or displayed a tendency to be absent, then that is also a really good sign. So those are some awesome signs. And these are things that you should also be really talking to your leaders about, helping them understand what they should be looking for. Also, the other piece that you want to talk to them about is that if they do see somebody, how do you address it? And like Suzanne said, right, we're not therapists. We should not even portray one on TV or movies. We shouldn't even try to become one. We have to be the ones that have the knowledge as to where do you draw the line in understanding what is going on with that employee's situation versus how far do you take the knowledge, because then if somebody is having a nervous breakdown or somebody is having a collapse, under the world is falling out from underneath them, if you start to regard them as having anxiety, regarding them as having some, their psychological condition is starting to shift, now you are starting to put the company into an ADA situation, American with Disabilities Act situation, where in fact that may not be the case. They just need a few days off, right? So you can actually cross that line without even thinking about it. Suzanne, do you have anything to add about that one?
Yeah, and one of the things that I want to say is if you feel that the employee needs a therapist and they just talk to someone about their feelings that are beyond the scope of you as an HR person or as their manager, then it is time to get the employee assistance program into play. And if you don't have an employee assistance program, in the US right now, we're getting really close to open enrollment and you can change your plans. Talk to your insurance broker about adding one. It's actually an incredibly cheap benefit. I don't have the numbers in front of me at the moment, but it's incredibly cheap as far as benefits go. And these are the people that can hook your people up with therapy, that they can provide licensed, qualified help for someone that needs that. And they can provide things for things that'll help people actually solve problems. Like I said, if somebody whose sister's house is destroyed with Hurricane Ida, which is now a tropical storm, but still, they can help you find organizations that can help your sister. They can do that. These are things that they can do. They can hook you up with veteran services, and they have all of the connections that we as HR or employers don't have. So the employee assistance program is super, super, super important. And if you don't have one, today is the day to talk with your insurance broker, because you're talking with your insurance broker right now anyway. So add that on. I swear it's not expensive.
You may even have one and not know it. I mean, yes, you could have one buried in a benefit somewhere that you don't even know exists. So it's a good thing to ask the question. Now, there are things that an employee assistance program can do for you. And one of the things that you want to do is, once you learn what the program is go on LinkedIn and find out who the programming director is or who is an account representative over there and contact them. If you call the toll-free number at the EAP, you're going to get toll-free number EAP responses. Okay. So the quality in what you're about ready to seek out, what I'm about ready to teach you to seek out, is going to lie in the quality of the questions that you ask. So the reason why I say this is that I'm going to tell you another story here in a little bit. But if you develop a relationship with one of the account managers over there, you are going to learn far more about what the EAP is capable of providing for your employees, including if it has any potential on-site support. And here's another one. This is something that I learned: when you have an employee who passes away in another country, can the EAP actually help you repatriate that employee's body and the remains? The EAP has that capability of doing something like that. So if you are, operating on foreign shores or somewhere across wherever in the United States, and you have an employee that passes away, not only is it traumatic for the team, but that's a question you have to figure out. How do we get that? And they're working for you, by the way. How do we get the remains back to the family? Right. So that you're going to find that you're going to be in that conversation. So the EAP is able to do more than just answer a toll-free number. A long time ago, and I've talked about it many times and I've written about it too, helped one of my former clients with a near stabbing event. And we actually immediately, once that happened, once we got the environment under control, the first thing that I did with the CEO of the company was we started to formulate our response. How was the company going to respond to employees? And so one of the things that I did is I contacted the representative that I knew over at the EAP program for this particular employee. I got to know who that person was. And I said, Barb, I need some help. We have had this near incident. I need to get a clinician on site tomorrow morning or Monday morning, because this happened on a Friday. And she goes, okay, no problem at all. I mean, it wasn't even a question. And she goes, what time do you guys want them there? I said, we want them there between 8 a.m. and 12 p.m. She goes, okay, great. Because I knew that we didn't have to pay for 4 hours. I said, if it turns out that we need to have the clinician there longer, how much is it going to cost? And she said, well, let me see if I can find a clinician who can stay beyond that time first. She came back to me. She goes, we have one. She can stay an additional 4 hours if you need her to. Here's what it's going to cost. And it was only going to be like $140 or something like that. This was this is 2013, 14. We'll call it 14. So to kind of give you an idea, because prices are rising everywhere we go. So
except for this, which is free.
Right. There you go. So, so we had that locked in. The clinician came in first thing Monday morning, showed up a few minutes before employees started coming in. And we announced to the employees that we were having an on-site clinician. So that way, if anybody was concerned about the safety, that they could come and talk. So at the end of it all, I talked to her at noon and she goes, I don't think you're going to need me to stay longer. And I said, okay. I said, did you have anybody visit? She goes, yeah, we actually had 5. I said, oh, that's great. What did you guys talk about? Now, there are things that the EAP clinician can tell you and that they can't tell you. What she was able to tell me is that nobody came to her with any fear of what had happened on Friday. I said, well, that's fantastic. And she goes, but we did wind up talking about something else that you should probably know about. And I said, what's that? She goes, everybody who showed up wanted to know why they didn't have the same lunch break schedule as everybody else. And I went, okay, well, we'll fix that. Thank you. I appreciate it. So solve that problem while we were at it. But, but that relationship is key, and it's a really good one. And when you build that relationship, like I said, you can actually sell it to your employees a lot easier.
And those things, we can laugh that was what people were complaining about and nobody was having fear over it. But talk about showing your employees that you care about them in providing someone to come in. And it's all about this compassion that we're having for people. that you want to reach out and let them know you may not be able to solve their problems. You certainly can't make the situation in Afghanistan any better. But what you can do is give your employees the support that they need in their time of crisis. And that EAP is just such a fantastic benefit for your employees to have. And you may never need to call in a clinician to come in and speak to people. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, whatever your superstition is of choice. Hopefully that never happens, but it's there for you. But the thing that will absolutely happen is an individual employee in crisis over something. And this will happen even if you have 3 employees.
Yeah.
Even if you have 2 employees, even if you are a solo practitioner, at some point you're going to be in crisis. I don't know if I've ever heard of anybody in a solo job having an EAP, but there you go. I don't have one, but I do have a therapist anyway. But that can be a really inexpensive tool that just helps people through crises, and personal or global. It can really be there for them, and it's just so important, and such an easy thing for you to do to help your employees.
Yep. Now, there's something else that you guys need to also focus in on, and that is, I mentioned it a minute ago. You need to work with your managers to start teaching them, first off, how to respond if they identify somebody who's having a challenge, what their course of action is. And that first thing is ask them briefly, are you okay? And if they say yes, and it's not very convincing, that's when they come and they partner with you. They do not take a pause. It becomes a priority. And then that way you guys can work to formulate a plan on what you think should happen moving forward. The other thing is that how managers should, what kind of messaging that they should use, because let's face it, not every manager is empathetic or sympathetic to the emotions of employees, or they are partially to some and not to all. All right. It's just the nature of it. Managers, not so much leaders, but managers are focused in on getting the job done. The last thing they need is one more thing that comes up to prevent that from happening. Now, you want to make sure that managers understand that what they need to do is that they need to listen and simply acknowledge, and then help them forecast steps forward. I hear what you're saying. I got it. Let me do this. Let me reach out to whoever in HR and find out what kind of answer we can provide for you. And then I will follow back up. But in the meantime, are you okay? Or do you have a safe place to go? Or do you need the number to the EAP hotline? Right? These are things that you can teach your managers. These are things that managers should be asking. They may not necessarily know it. And then if necessary, if they've got somebody who's literally on the edge, I'm going to give you the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline hotline. It is available 24 hours a day. This is a number that you should have literally popped on your corkboard or taped or label maker to your computer monitor or something. This is good for veterans. It's good for everybody. It's 1-800-273-8255. 1-800-273-8255. That number is something that you can call as a practitioner to get advice. You can give to the employee, give it with the EAP. And, you can't force anybody to do it, but all you can do is just give them the outreach and then just monitor the situation.
Absolutely. That's what you can do. You can monitor, but use the resources that you have. Use those that you have. And a lot of people don't use them. There's this weird sense that, oh, we can get through this on our own. I don't need help. I'm a good manager. I'm a good listener. Yes, great. And you know what good managers do? They they know their limits, and they recognize where other people can step in and help, in those things. And so do that. And there's no shame in that. You're not a bad manager. You're not a bad HR person if you say, call the EAP, or let me give you an extra personal day off to help you with whatever it is that you're going through. Or to say to an employee, what can we do to help you? And you may be surprised at just how willing your employees are to jump in and help one another. I have seen situations where people have immediately, jumped in, volunteered to go help with storm cleanup. People who will donate money to a trusted coworker who has a family member in crisis. I have seen people jump together to do acts of kindness for refugees. You may be surprised at what they will do. The key thing here is that you as HR, you as a manager, need to lead by example. And those type of activities need to be voluntary, but it can actually help people feel better because they are doing something. It may not solve the world problem, but they are doing what they can in their little part of the world to help other people. And that actually can make everybody feel better. But what you can't do as the manager, as HR, as a business owner, is be like, okay, everybody donate $100 to, this refugee fund. No, say, we here at, Evil HR Lady LLC are going to donate $1,000. And if you would like to donate, then please join us. People will be far more likely to jump in when it's completely voluntary, and be happy about it and feel like they're doing something. If you force it, it feels like a pay cut, and they build resentment towards you, and it doesn't give them that feeling of helping other people. And you know what? People may not, if you're asking for financial donations or time donations or whatever, people may not. It's not because they're bad people. It's because it's their time and their money, and they can choose how to do it. And that's the other thing, is you as the employer don't know what is going on in other people's lives. You may say, well, I know how much money you make. You should absolutely have no problem donating $50 towards refugees. You don't know. Maybe they are in deep debt. Maybe they have a spouse that is sick and can't work, and there's just all sorts of things, or maybe they just don't want to, and those things are okay. It's okay to not want to.
And you got to watch it, because when people don't do things, so I have a friend of mine, his name is Scott Simons, and he actually is on he's one of the hosts on Clubhouse's Breakfast of Champions. I've known Scott now for quite a while. He's an awesome guy. And he just did a podcast the other day, and one of the things that he mentioned is that as a leader, he was focusing in on the things that he thinks his employees should be doing. The things that he believed that they should be excited about, the things that he believed that they should, focus in on, and what he believes their core values should be. And it was a completely innocent mindset. It's something I see quite often. And it wasn't until he realized that he was kind of imprinting that on people. And so if you have a belief that people should be doing X, and it doesn't align with what you believe, just do yourself a favor. Don't imprint that on somebody else, because once you start doing that, then they're going to feel it, and your relationship with that person is going to start to erode. And we don't want that either, right? So
No.
so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and stop our recording, and we're going to start answering some questions over here. So for those of you who are watching our recording, if you want to join us in on the live conversation, you can link up with us every Thursday over on Clubhouse, because it is open to everybody now. And just look for the Real HR Show.